Alright everybody, today we're going to learn about solving literal equations. Basically literal equations are formulas that we may need to rearrange or equations that don't have numbers, and so you're just basically doing whatever operation you would normally do if it did have numbers, but there's nothing to actually calculate. So in my mind it's a little bit easier because if you know what to do, the order and the steps to do it, there's not anything you're actually having to punch in a calculator or anything you're actually trying to figure out or anything like that. So it should be a little simpler. I know sometimes this lesson's kind of tricky. So here we go. Let's get started. First thing we're going to start with is this volume formula. We have volume equals length times width times height. And they want us to solve it for height. So if we have length times width times height, okay, all those things are being multiplied. So if I want to solve it for height, then all I have to do is divide by the length and the width. So my answer is volume divided by length and width, and that is the height. Alright, if I take that same equation, if I say the volume is the length times the width times the height, but this time I want to solve it for W, I want to solve it for the width. Okay, it's not going to change how I'm doing anything because all of those things are still multiplication. So I just divide by the two things that I don't need, which is the length and the height. So I get volume over length times height equals the width. Alright, so all that was being done to the h here was multiplication, length times width times height. All that's being done to the w here is multiplication, length times width times height. So I can just divide out the things that I don't need. If I take this equation, y equals mx plus b, and I want to solve it for b, okay, now I have a couple things. What's being done to the b? Okay, the only thing that's being done to the b is I am adding this m and this x. And this m and this x are being multiplied together, but that doesn't really matter because all that matters is what's being done to the b. So if this is plus mx, then all I have to do is subtract the mx to get it to the other side. So I get y minus mx equals b. Okay, now the next thing. If I take this same equation, I want to solve it for x. Now I have a couple of different things that are being done to the x. The m is being multiplied times the x, but we're also adding this b. Alright, so if I'm solving this for x, now I've got multiplication and I've got addition that I've got to deal with. So I'm going to go the reverse of the order of operations, just like if I had a bunch of numbers in there. Okay, and I want to get rid of the plus b, I want to get rid of that first. So if I subtract b, then now the y minus b is on the other side and I have m times x. Well, if I have m times x, then I want to divide the m over here. So I get y minus b divided by m equals x. And so then that is my answer for that one. Alright? Now, I've got this density formula here. Okay, so density equals mass over volume. Okay, density equals mass over volume. If they want me to solve it for mass, then this becomes fairly simple because I've got mass divided by volume. So to move the volume to the other side, if it's divided by volume, then I want to multiply by the volume. So I get density times the volume equals the mass. Alright? So, pretty simple. Now, if we say this same equation for density again, but this time we want to solve it for v. Because the v is on the bottom of a fraction, okay, there's no way to just get rid of the m and then have the answer for volume. Alright, so you basically have to go through the same steps as we did before, okay, and you've got to get rid of the fraction first, okay, you always want to get rid of that fraction. So we're going to multiply by v. When we multiply by v, we're going to get density times volume equals the mass. Alright, now, this time we're solving it for V, so we're not done because the V is being multiplied times density. But we can just divide by the density and we get volume equals mass over density. Now, if you work enough of those, you're going to realize that while you're multiplying by V and then dividing by D, it kind of looks like the two things are just trading places, and that's fine, but you also need to understand the math behind it. Alright, now we get to this formula. This is the formula for the area of a trapezoid, which that's not really important right now, but just so you recognize it when you see it again. Alright, so we have area equals half of base 1 plus base 2 times the h. So if I'm solving this for h, okay, the same thing is true that was true before. I want to get rid of this fraction first. Okay, so when I get rid of the fraction first, if this is a half, I'm going to flip it over and I'm multiplying by 2 times 1. Well, 2 over 1 is just 2, so it's basically just like multiplying by 2. Alright, so I get 2a equals b1 plus b2 times h. Okay, once again I'm solving for h. So what is being done to the h? Okay, the b1 plus the b2 is in parentheses, and that whole thing is being multiplied times the h. Okay, so if that whole thing is being multiplied times the h, then the way I get rid of it is to divide it, because that's the opposite of multiply. So I just divide the b1 plus b2 to the other side, or actually on both sides. You can see this is going to cancel out. I get 2a over b1 plus b2, okay, is going to equal the h. Alright, now we get another fraction problem. This one's a little bit different. I have 3 over 7 times x plus 1 equals y, and I'm solving it for x. So if I'm solving this for x, okay, the x is inside of this set of parentheses, which means I can't do anything with the x, okay, until I can get rid of the parentheses. I can't get rid of the parentheses until I deal with this fraction on the outside. So I have two choices. I can do distributive property, which in this case is not going to be real helpful, or I can go ahead and if I have this fraction times this set of parentheses, I can just get rid of the fraction. Well, how do I get rid of a fraction? The same way I get rid of any fraction. If it's 3 over 7, I can flip it and multiply. So multiply by 7 over 3. So I'm going to do the same thing over there by the y on the other side of the equal sign. So now, on the left, the 3 over 7 times the 7 over 3 is going to make a 1. Okay, so basically it cancels itself out. Alright, so now I have x plus 1 equals 7 over 3 times y. Alright, so now if I'm solving for x, what's being done to the x? All I have is x plus 1. So if I want to get rid of the plus 1, all I have to do is add or subtract 1. So I get x equals 7 over 3 y minus 1. Now, I can also write this 7y over 3 minus 1. Okay, either way, both of those things mean the exact same thing, so it doesn't matter which way you write it. Alright, we get over here. We have a times b plus 3/4 in parentheses, and it's set equal to 2, and they want us to solve it for b. Alright, same thing again. If I'm solving for b, I've got to deal with this outside number first. Okay, so when I have this outside number, a is being multiplied times the b plus the 3/4. Well, I've either got to distribute it if I think that's going to be helpful, or I've got to go ahead and divide it if I don't want to multiply this a times the b or a times the 3/4. Okay, in this particular equation, I'm trying to get the b by itself. Okay, so it's going to be easiest if I don't do distributive property, if I just divide by the a, because I want to move it over to the other side. So I'm going to divide by the a. Alright? And so now I have b plus 3/4 equals 2 over a. Alright? Now, I've got b plus 3/4. So if I've got b plus 3/4, okay, and I want to get the b by itself, the opposite of plus 3/4 is to subtract the 3/4. Okay, so I subtract it. So now I have b equals 2 over a minus 3/4. So b equals 2 over a minus the 3/4. Alright? This one, make sure you put a little asterisk as you're writing these notes down or as you're paying attention to what's going on here. This one is very similar to question 19 on your homework. I'm telling you that you really need to pay attention to this, looking like question 19, because for some reason your book puts something on here that you don't know how to do yet, because you don't know how to factor. We're not going to talk about factoring really until the end of Algebra 1 instead of right here at the beginning, but they throw it in there, so we're going to go over it real fast. Make sure you know what you're doing. Alright, so if we have x times y minus 4, close the parentheses, plus 7 equals a y. Okay, if we're solving for y, this is the first time we've had anything like this where we've got a y on the right and we got another y on the left. Okay, so that becomes a little bit tricky. We've got to try and get both the y's to the same side. Alright, so in this case, it doesn't do us any good to move the x over here, because that's going to make it just a lot more complicated. Alright, so what we do need to do is do the distributive property. So x times the y and x times the negative 4. Alright, so you're going to get xy, then you're going to get minus 4x, we've got a plus 7, and then we've got equals the ay. Alright, so now, if I want both of the terms that have a y in them to be on the same side, if this is a positive xy, then the way I move it is I'm going to subtract it. Okay, so this is going to make a 0. I have negative 4x, so I write it down. I have positive 7, I write that down. And then over here on the right, I have ay minus xy. Okay, ay minus xy. Alright, now, this is the part that you don't know how to do yet. If you think about distributive property, okay, distributive property, we said x times the y and x times the negative 4. So when we come down here, you see how there's an x in both of these terms. Okay, factoring, which is what we're going to have to do here, is basically undoing the distributive property. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to undo this as if it was distributive property. So if we have a y here and a y here, we're going to take that y out, and we're going to put it in front of the parentheses, and we're going to take what's left, a minus x, and we're putting that in parentheses. So we took this and we basically did the reverse, like we undid the distributive property. So we have y times a minus x. Okay, if you were going to do distributive property with this, then you would say y times the a, y times the negative x, and you would end up with this. Okay, so we undid it. Okay, that's the part that we're not really going to get into until the end of Algebra 1. So not real sure why your book threw that in there, but there it is. So now you know how to do it. Alright, so we've still got minus 4x plus 7. Alright, now I'm solving for y. So if I'm solving for y, and it's y times the a minus the x, then I want to divide by what I don't want, which is the a minus x. So I'm going to do the same thing over here. So I get negative 4x plus 7 divided by a minus x equals y. Alright, so that's your lesson for today, solving literal equations. Hope you're having a good day. Hope you understood what was going on, and we'll see you next time.